All right, welcome back, everybody.
Hey, hey, hey.
It's Christmas.
It is. Merry Christmas or Merry Festivus or
Merry holidays.
Merry all of the holidays.
Yeah.
Or none of them.
Or none of them, if you choose to celebrate none of them. That's okay, too. All right, so today I've got a Christmas story. It's not a very happy Christmas story, though.
It's not about sugar plums and Santa and reindeer and...
No, it's about murder.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to tell us the story about the murder of Sameena Imam.
Okay.
And this takes place Christmas Eve of 2014. So not very long ago.
Mm-hmm.
I got most of my information from a Vice article, from BBC, The Guardian, and ITVX. So this takes place in the UK. And like I said, it starts on Christmas Eve 2014. And Sameena Imam is a 34-year-old woman who is a regional marketing manager for Costco. And she was working out of a store outside of Coventry. And she had a boyfriend of 2 years, 41-year-old Roger Cooper, who was a manager of Costco. And Roger was juggling 3 girlfriends.
As one does.
As one does. And I don't, like most of the things that I read said that he had 3 girlfriends. One was like a long-term relationship. There was Sameena, and then there wasn't really any information about the third woman other than she existed. So Samina's tired of being a side chick. And so she gives Roger an ultimatum to leave his long-term relationship and be with her full-time, or she was going to leave him. And of course, in true man fashion, he said, I pick you. Of course I pick you.
Obviously.
Duh. And so he told her he was going to take her to spend Christmas at the Malmaison Hotel in Birmingham. And at some point during that day, Sameena left work to buy, which, I mean, all of this, like her ultimatum happened way earlier in the month or even the month before, but Christmas Eve, she leaves work, she goes and buys a bottle of Bellini. I don't really know what Bellini is. Is it champagne? Wine?
I think, aren't Bellinis like sort of like a champagne cocktail?
I have no idea. I don't know anything about those things.
Is Bellini and a Bellini the same thing? Because I think that a Bellini is like a cocktail.
I don't know. All of these said was that she left work to buy a bottle of Bellini and a bucket of sweet treats. And at 4 p.m. on Christmas Eve, Sameena and Roger left work separately in their own cars. They met up a little while later where Sameena unpacked her luggage and her things from her BMW and moved them into Roger's Audi. On their way to Birmingham, Roger said he was going to stop and visit his brother David in Leicester. On the drive, Sameena spoke to her sister and confirmed plans for them to go to their parents' house on Boxing Day for their family's Christmas celebration. And they arrived at David's house at 5 p.m. And it seems that, like, immediately upon entering the house, Roger and David attacked Sameena.
All right.
And it probably wasn't difficult because they were both, well, one of them was 6'7" and the other one was 6'5", and she was 5'2". So both really large mans and one really small woman.
Yes.
And she was smothered with a tea towel that was soaked in chloroform. They had purchased the chloroform on eBay a few weeks before. And it's also believed that she was given a, quote, bizarre combination of metallic elements, including antimony, cadmium, tin, mercury, and arsenic in liquid form.
Whatever happened to just like breaking up with people?
I don't know. Because that seems easier.
And less illegal.
Definitely less illegal. But yeah.
Just being like, you know what? I don't want to pick, so bye.
Right? Yeah.
I'll pick me a different side chick.
And he obviously, like, was okay with her not being his side chick anymore because he killed her.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't like their relationship was, like, so meaningful that he needed to, like, figure out a way to be with her too.
Right.
I don't know. It's crazy. Her cause of death was the chloroform. And I guess the medical examiner people, I don't know what they call them in the UK, but they said that they don't see many deaths by chloroform. So this was a a unique death for them. Not really much was said about the other things that they fed to her. I don't know if they did that before or after or what the purpose of that was, but I don't know. At 6:25, so they had got to David's house at 5, now 6:25, so just a little, like an hour and a half later, Roger was headed back to Coventry to establish his alibi. He sent himself a text message to himself from Samina's phone that read, quote, "I am fuming. I am going to where I am truly cared for," and then he went home to his girlfriend.
Yes.
Meanwhile, David was working on disposing of Samina's body. He wrapped her in cling film, which is saran wrap for you uncultured Americans, put her in a sleeping bag.
Uncultured swine.
He put her in a sleeping bag and buried her on an allotment on Groby Road. So if you are an uncultured American like me and you didn't know what an allotment was, it's basically exactly what it sounds like. It's a piece of land that's rented to grow food and flowers on, or sometimes to keep animals on. So David had one of these, and apparently he had a shed on the allotment that I don't know if it was just coincidental, but there was a sign hanging from the door that read, "Don't wind me up. I'm running out of places to hide the bodies." So
red flag.
Perhaps. In the following days, Roger and David did more things to cover up the murder. They moved Samina's car from Coventry to Leicester, wiped it down for prints and DNA, and then abandoned it in Luton, 65 miles away from Coventry. On Boxing Day, because remember she was supposed to go to her family celebration, she doesn't show up. So they call the police and report her missing. On January 4th, which is about a week later, Samina's car is found in Luton. Her luggage, purse are missing. There's no fingerprints, which the police found strange because her car should have at least had her fingerprints in it.
Generally, when you drive your car, you leave fingerprints.
Right. You would.
So there should be some fingerprints, not none.
Yes. And her DNA should have been in there. Like, she should have, like, whatever. Also, the driver's seat was pushed back way too far for her to have been driving.
Right.
Which, recently, I decided it was time for the bear to watch Son-in-Law. And I don't know if you remember, but the creep from Teen Witch is in it. And Kelly Kapowski is in it. And he drugs Kelly Kapowski and Crawl, Pauly Shore's character, and puts them in the barn to make it look like they had hooked up or whatever. And the next morning they both wake up and they're like, "Man, we don't remember what happened." And Kelly gets in her car and her seat is pushed
she's like, "Whoa,
all
wait
the way
a second.
back.
I'm a petite lady."
Yes. And so I was like, as soon as I read that, like, that's what popped into my brain was whenever her car seat was pushed all the way back, and she that's what made her realize that, like, this wasn't me. I didn't do this.
She didn't drive there.
Right. And Pauly Shore's pretty short too. So like,
he's not like a huge man.
Yeah. So that was a coincidental thing that recently happened. So that I had rewatched that and then that happened. So anyway, the police go from investigating this now as a missing persons case into a no body murder inquiry. And I don't know if they had her phone or if they were just able to get the details from the phone company, but they could tell from her phone data that she had traveled to Leicester on Christmas Eve. And so then immediately these brothers are under suspicion. The police... This is an idiot. So the Bellini and the snacks that she purchased.
The drinks and snacks.
Yes. The police found the bottle of Bellini in David's refrigerator and the snacks in his cupboard.
Yes. He was all, well, we can't let this go to waste.
Absolutely not. And her sat nav was also in his house. And the police received a tip from the public that sent them to the allotment, where after 4 days of searching, archaeologists found the edge of the sleeping bag and then found Samina's body. The brothers were arrested on January 7th, 2015. They were found guilty of Samina's murder on October 21st, and by Christmas of that year, they were both serving 30-year sentences. So, why did they kill Sameena?
Because they're gross, and they didn't learn how to be decent people.
That's probably the major reason. But
nobody ever told them no before.
Nobody ever told them murder is bad. So Roger was afraid that Sameena was going to reveal their relationship to his longtime girlfriend. And detectives also speculated that he might have been worried that he was going to be fired because relationships between managers was prohibited by their company. So during their trial, it also came out that the brothers had actually attempted to kill her earlier in the month on December 12th. Sameena was a regular guest at the, so I wrote this out phonetically, but it still sounds weird, Salil's Premier Inn. Roger went, I guess that's a town, Salil. I don't know. It looks weird. But anyway, at the Premier Inn. And Roger had told her that he was going to get them a room for the night and that he had a surprise for her. However, he had no room and there was no surprise. I guess the surprise was that he wasn't going to be there. But his brother David was waiting in a rental car on the property. But something went wrong. And I didn't really read, like, it didn't go into detail about what went wrong other than, like, she possibly showed up in a taxi instead of her own car or something. And I don't know, like, if they had a fight or anything after this, that, you know, like, because she was showing up there thinking that she was going to stay the night or whatever. Nothing really came of that. But it said that, however, something went wrong and Sameena made it through the night unharmed. But while David was waiting for Sameena to arrive, he and Roger were using Star Wars codes in their text messages. So some of the texts...
they're dorks and they're evil.
I actually have a sentence read later that says, so they were nerds who were also murderers.
Yes.
Yeah. So, they had messages reading Death Star complete, stay on target, which is apparently a New Hope reference. Look at the size of that thing, and you are expected, Vader.
All right.
Yeah. Detective Chief Inspector Carolyn Marsh said, quote, I would say this is the most callous offense I have ever investigated. And Judge Patrick Thomas, QC, which stands for Queen's Counsel, told the brothers during their trial, quote, the use of a poison in a case such as this demonstrates a cold-blooded intention to kill, regardless of the consequences. You work together hand in glove in planning and carrying out the murder of a joyful and bubbly young woman brutally betrayed by a man she loved and his brother. And that is the story of the murder of Sameena Imam.
Well, all right.
Yeah. So that was not a very happy Christmas for her.
No.
Or her family.
No.
Well, since my story was so short, you guys are going to get a Christmas bonus. Faren's got a story for us, too.
It's not Christmassy at all. It's actually takes place in April. So mine is not Christmas themed. It is UFO themed.
Well, right on. We haven't done one of those yet.
Nope, we haven't done it. It's not as alien-y as I would like it to be, and it's also pretty short, but hopefully it'll be at least interesting. So this is the Lonnie Zamora UFO incident, which took place here in New Mexico.
I have not heard of this one.
It takes place in Socorro, New Mexico on April 24th, 1964.
Okay.
Police Sergeant Lonnie Zamora was chasing a speeding car, but while he was doing that, he heard a loud roar and saw a flame in the distance, thinking that a local dynamite shack had exploded. I mean, it took me a minute on that one too. I'm just like, are dynamite shacks like a common thing? Were they common in the 60s? Are they common in Socorro?
It also seems very unsafe to have a shack full of dynamite.
Full of explosives?
Socorro, where is Socorro at?
It's in between like Albuquerque and Ruidoso, because you know how when we go the opposite way every once in a while, we drive through Socorro.
Oh, okay. So are there mines there?
I don't know. I wondered that because I don't know much about Socorro other than they're kind of like Los Lunas and they do like tech things and stuff as well.
I'm going to Google it. While all pearlite ore mines are unique, Socorro is believed to be the deepest known commercial pearlite ore deposit in the world.
Well, there you go.
Okay, so that's why they have dynamite.
Shacks full of dynamite.
It still seems like an unsafe way to store your dynamite.
Especially in the desert. It gets pretty hot here. It probably wouldn't have been super hot in April, but still, like, it gets pretty hot here.
Yeah. I don't know how safe dynamite in the 60s would have been anyway.
Right. How stable it was.
Right. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, so he thought that a local dynamite shack had exploded. So he stopped chasing the car.
But also, like, just that, like, that's, like, his immediate thought.
Right.
Like, that was just a dynamite shack.
Right. So upon witnessing this, he decided to call off the car chase, and he went to investigate. On his way to investigate, he saw what he thought was an overturned white car out in the middle of the desert.
Okay.
He thought he was responding to a car accident, so he informed dispatcher Nep Lopez that he was going to check out the vehicle that was in the arroyo. But upon arrival, he found something else. He said it looked like a balloon. It was kind of O-shaped. It was metallic, but not like chrome.
Okay.
So he radioed back to the dispatcher and asked him to look out the window and tell him what he could see. So I'm assuming that it wasn't very far from the station.
No. Well, and, like, I don't know. I guess the way Socorro is.
Yeah, because, like, I was just like, well, why would he be able to see the same thing you're seeing if you were on, like, a high-speed chase? But
yeah.
And so I don't know if the incident was near the police station or what.
Yeah.
But he told him to look out the window and see what he could see. He starts driving closer to the object, and he sees two figures standing close to it.
Okay.
They were described as being not quite the size of adults, or possibly the size of, like, large children.
Who exploded the dynamite.
Yes. They exploded the dynamite shack. As he gets closer to the craft, the two figures disappear into it, and it flies away.
Oh.
He described the craft as having red markings on the hull, a vertical arrow with a horizontal line beneath it, and a crescent-shaped line above it. He was quoted as saying, sorry,
cats are
destroying the house.
You know, as cats do.
Anyway, he was quoted as saying, I saw this flame come up from underneath it, and then I ran back behind the car. It went up 20 or 30 feet in the air. It just stayed there for a while. Then finally, it just took off slowly to the west. At first, you know, after I got to my senses, I said, did I see it or didn't I? Do we want to?
I think they're playing with a ball. It sounded like they batted a jingle ball.
I just meant, did we want to make them stop making noise?
Oh, I don't know. They're having a really good time. They just wanted to join in on the recording of the podcast.
Yeah.
It was a jingle bell.
It's Christmas. State Police Officer Sergeant Chavez joined him at the scene, and Sergeant Zamora led him to examine the burning brush that was left behind. As other officers arrived at the scene, they noticed smoldering grass and brush. Sergeant Zamora was visibly shaken and affected by what he saw. He and Sergeant Chavez found indentations in the ground that appeared to be landing marks. They also noted that they could not find any footprints around where the craft had been. So even though there had been figures walking around it, they found no shoe prints, no footprints.
Right.
Nothing out in the dirt, but some burned brush, burned grass, scorch marks.
Yeah.
And the landing marks were supposedly like 8 inches deep into the ground or something like that.
Oh, well, that's pretty far.
Yeah. Army officials at nearby White Sands Missile Range sent Captain Richard T. Holder to investigate. His first impression was that it was something from the range that needed help, but the further that he investigated, he was less convinced of that. He noticed the same markings in the sand and a bush that had been burned only on one side. He claimed that everything seemed to support what Sergeant Zamora had told them, and nothing brought him to believe it was falsified or a hoax. So even the military is saying, you know, this guy saw something.
And it definitely wasn't a dynamite shack that exploded.
No.
Okay.
I think that it would have left different debris than...
Yeah, I guess that's true. Like, you would have seen, like,
wood exploded in the area, and, you know, some sort of remains that would, well, plus, you know, he saw the thing.
Well, right. But I mean, like, even if he had, like, told tales.
Yeah.
You know.
So, after the investigation, the Air Force agreed that Sergeant Zamora saw something, but insisted that it was a secret military aircraft, although no evidence has ever been found that any such object was ever being tested.
But also, like, in Area 51, they test so many things that we don't know. Mm-hmm. Because, like, I knew that one guy that one time that apparently had worked at Area 51 at one point, and he said that, like, even the people who work in Area 51 don't know everything that's going on in Area 51.
Right, but, like, they're saying that, like, nothing like this has ever been seen since. Nothing that would lead them to believe that, you know, this was definitely something that the military was working on. Yeah. But again, the military doesn't always tell you everything. And maybe it was something that they decided to scrap.
Yeah, that's true.
They worked on it at that time in the 60s, and then they went, nah. And
Right. It didn't work out.
In the early 2000s, skeptic Robert Schaefer claimed that the whole thing was a hoax by students of the nearby New Mexico Tech. His theory was supported by a letter found from 1968 where Nobel Prize-winning chemist Linus Pauling wrote to noted physicist Sterling Colgate, who actually served as the president of New Mexico Tech at the time. In the letter, simply just as an aside, Pauling writes asking about the famous UFO incident that happened near the campus. Colgate replies saying, "I have good indication of the student who engineered the hoax. Student has left. Cheers, Sterling." Since then, no real evidence to this claim has ever been brought to light, even though the president says that he knows for a fact it was a hoax.
Right. So they don't know who the student was because he doesn't name the student.
No, he never names the student. He just says, "I know who did it. The student doesn't go to school here anymore."
Mm-hmm. But what a weird, sentence to throw into that.
Right.
If that's not what it was about, just hey, by the way.
Yeah. They, like I said, it said in just the letter that he just made it as an aside, oh, what about that UFO incident that happened there and nearby? And
remember that thing that happened? Yeah.
So Sergeant Zamora stuck to his story until his death, saying that if people believed him, then good, and if not, that was also all right. He never became a UFO hunter or any fanatical thing that some people that want to convince you that they definitely were abducted or definitely saw aliens or whatever did. And he just lived a very normal life. To some, that proved that he had no reason to make up his story, and it gave even more credibility to his account.
Yeah, I guess that's true because, I don't know, he didn't become fanatical or anything about it.
Yeah. And that's all I have about that. It's a pretty short little story, but...
It was interesting, though, because, living in New Mexico forever, I've never heard of that one before.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it either until I was just researching, but it seems to be a pretty popular one. It's been documented in Project Blue Book, but even Project Blue Book kind of came up with a story saying that it had to be military stuff. And what I read was that they mostly made up some untrue story about it to keep the military from bothering them or whatever.
Oh, interesting.
Keep the Air Force off their back.
Right. But wasn't the military the ones that said that, he did see something?
But the military also said it was definitely just top secret.
Oh, yeah.
Military stuff that we don't know about or can't disclose. And
oh, okay.
They said that they had, let me see. They brought out a UFO, an astronomer. So they brought out an astronomer and a consultant on Project Blue Book. He's both of these things. It's not two different people.
Oh, okay.
Dr. J. Allen Hynek. And he said that the evidence was convincing, but Jerome Clark, who is a UFO expert and author, he said, quote, "Dr. Hynek was enormously impressed by Lonnie Zamora. He thought there was virtually no possibility of a hoax. He expressed huge disdain for the Blue Book handling of the report. And he said it was clear that the story that Blue Book had cooked up about this possibly being some kind of experimental aircraft was a story that even Blue Book knew to be untrue, but which was invented to keep Congress from harassing the Air Force." So
yeah,
they're saying that even Blue Book made it up to sound like it was definitely some sort of experimental thing so that to keep Congress off their back.
Oh, I see. Well,
yeah. Hopefully we'll have some better UFO stories as we go, because I know that people are interested in those. But that was just a quick one that I had found to help fill in some time.
Yeah, it was a good one. I'm glad that you chose that one. All right. Well, find us on social media at Twisted and Mysterious, unless you're on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Again, that one's weird. What did I say it was? Twist Miss Pod.
TW Twisty and Misty.
I know, I didn't change it. TWISMYSPOD. Or you can email us at twistedandmysteriousPodcast@gmail.com. All right. You have anything else?
I don't think so. Have a very Merry Twistmas.
Yes, do that.
And as always, remember that people are gross and don't get murdered.
All right. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.